I was trying to be sneaky with it, but that ain't gonna work, and that ain't gonna sit there for very long, is it, before it falls? Hold on. You give me a second here, guys. Don't fall. Stay where you're at. I tried doing this live stream just a minute ago, and it was not working out very well for anybody because the stream was skipping and wasn't doing a very good job of keeping up with the internet or whatever. So I kept glitching. Anyway, I'm gonna try and put this little stopper right there, and hopefully things will stay. Don't go anywhere. All right, uneducated economist. We're gonna try and do this live stream again. I had tried to show what was taking place within the economy right now when it comes to the Fed funds rate, and how it is that the Fed funds rate is not nearly as resistive to the economy as people would like to give it credit for. Now, I just poured over a bunch of speeches, and I'm not exactly sure how many came through on the first live stream, but essentially I am going to describe what it is that's taken place here, and I'm going to go back over some of this information once again. So for a lot of people out there who are trying to understand what it is that's taken place within the economy right now, to understand that the Federal Reserve is in a position in which that they either try to accommodate or restrict the economy. And now by trying to accommodate the economy, it means that they lower interest rates, and by lowering interest rates, they are able to get people to go out there, buy houses, cars, go on vacation, expand their operations, start businesses. When they start businesses or even expand their operations, they're hiring people, and this expansion of hiring people and people buying things, consuming, going on vacation, this is what causes the inflationary scenario that the Federal Reserve would be looking for. So if they lower interest rates, this is what creates the inflationary scenario. If they raise interest rates, hopefully in their mind that they can slow the economy down and lower the inflationary scenario. All right, so now this is very common for a lot of people to think about. What most people end up missing and what is not well talked about is the neutral interest rate, and how it is that the Federal Reserve is operating their Fed funds rate in relation to the neutral interest rate. Now, I'm going to take this whiteboard here, and it's going to be backwards because the YouTube app does not let you do a mirror image where it doesn't cause the image. They won't allow you to flip it. Basically, this is what you get. So now everything that I'm going to show you is essentially going to be backwards. Now, I guess at some point I could probably download the video and then flip it so that it actually goes the correct way. But until then, we just kind of have to suffer with it, and I'm just going to go with it as if it was correct for me, and you're going to have to just look at it backwards and just understand that that's what it is. So please bear with me while this goes on. All right. I mean, I don't know what to do. I tried doing a live stream where I flipped the camera or flipped my phone around, but then when it glitched and the stream ended, I didn't know when it went to an end. And when I checked on it on my tablet, I came to a realization that it had ended a long time ago, and that I wasn't doing anything but just talking to myself, which was a lot of fun in practice, but it doesn't work out for you guys in understanding the monetary policy. So here we go again. Trying to explain what happened with monetary policy, the Fed funds rate in relation to the neutral interest rate. Now, how many we got in here? 50 people. Thank you so much for coming back to the live stream. I mean, I'm really disappointed that my initial effort just completely failed. So we're going to break this down again so that I hope you guys can understand what it is that's happening here, at least from what I can gather through the Fed's own statements. The number one problem that the Federal Reserve was facing is that they were coming into the lower bound of zero, right? Now, if we can imagine zero interest rates, when the Federal Reserve would try to lower interest rates to stimulate the economy, once they hit zero, that was it. They were done. And downward adjustment of interest rates was no longer an effective tool. So they just simply could not drop below the effective lower bound. And this is what they ended up calling it, was the zero bound, the lower bound of zero, or the effective lower bound of zero. So ELB, right, the effective lower bound, this was the problem for the Federal Reserve that they were facing, not just recently when the COVID hit or even during the great financial crisis. This is something that they understood and knew about way back in the early 2000s. So now I take you back to a Ben Bernanke speech that, oops, sorry guys. kind of fumbling through my folders here. Okay. So I take you back to this Ben Bernanke speech, and in this speech, this is what he has to say. Deflation recession may differ in one respect from a normal recession, in which inflation rate is at least modestly positive. Deflation of sufficient magnitude may result in nominal interest rates declining to zero or very close to zero. Once the nominal interest rates are at zero, no further downward adjustment in rates can occur, since lenders generally will not accept a negative nominal interest rate when it is possible instead to hold cash. At this point, the nominal interest rate is said to have hit the zero bound. So again, like when the Fed funds rate gets down to zero, that's it. They're done. It's over. No more monetary policy through the adjustment of interest rates. Now, he said that's okay. He said it's okay because we understand that this is going to take place at some point in the future. Hey, if we can avoid it, there's all kinds of ideas and plans and concepts that we can go through that he talks about within the speech to try and prevent this scenario from happening, but most likely it's going to end up happening, and he knew it because they were theorizing on it at the time. Now, again, November 21st of 2020, he was talking about what happens when the Fed funds rate hits the lower bound of zero, and this is what he has to say. Oops. Central banks conveniently conduct monetary policy by manipulating the short-term nominal interest rate. Some observers have concluded that when the key rate stands at or near zero, the central bank has run out of ammunition. That is, no longer has the power to expand aggregate demand and hence economic activity, right? This is the people going out there buying houses, cars, going on vacation, expanding their business operations, and hiring people. All right. Hence the economic activity. It is true that once the policy rate has been driven to zero, a central bank no longer uses its traditional means of stimulating aggregate demand and thus will be operating in less familiar territory. The central bank's inability to use its traditional methods may complicate policy-making process and introduce uncertainty in the size and timing of the economic response to the policy actions. Hence, I agree the situation is one to be avoided if possible. He knew it was going to happen. That once the Fed funds rate hit zero, that's it. Out of ammunition. They no longer use their effective tool for stimulating the economy. It doesn't work. Right. And again, I apologize for those who are looking at this. This is a mirror image. YouTube will not let me flip it on my app so that I can actually see the screen at the same time. So you're just going to have to just understand that it's mirrored. All right. Goes on to say this. Oops. As I have mentioned, some observers have concluded that when a central bank's policy rate falls to zero, its practical minimum, monetary policy loses its ability to further stimulate aggregate demand in the economy. At a broad conceptual level, and in my view and practice as well, this conclusion is clearly mistaken. Indeed, under a fiat, that is, paper money system of government, in practice, and the central bank cooperation with other agencies should always be able to generate increased nominal spending and inflation even when the short-term nominal interest rate is at zero. This is their plan. This is the plan that they had for when nominal interest rates, the Fed funds rate gets to zero and they no longer have an effective tool because they have hit the effective lower bound, right? Dropping of interest rates is no longer working for them. They said the conclusion that deflation is always reversible under a fiat money system follows from some basic economic reasoning. A little parable may prove useful today. An ounce of gold sells for $300 more or less. Now suppose that a modern alchemist solves his subject's oldest problem by finding a way to produce unlimited amounts of new gold at essentially no cost. Moreover, his invention is widely publicized and scientifically verified, and he announces his intention to begin the massive production of gold within days. What would happen to the price of gold? Presumably, the potentially unlimited supply of cheap gold would cause the market price of gold to plummet. Indeed, if the market for gold is to any degree efficient, the price of gold would collapse immediately after the announcement of the invention, before the alchemist had produced and marketed a single ounce of the yellow metal. That is their game plan for that. Jawboning, forward guidance, signaling, what I like to call credible threat theory. Now, we got to fast forward because already I have just used up way much of your time by messing up the first video and getting you all to come back out here for the second one. Oh, why are you failing me? Okay. Oh, come on. Okay, monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world. I know I've gone over this speech so many times, guys. I know I have, but I think this is probably the key to understanding why the monetary policy is in the position it is today. If you don't get this speech, if you don't know it, if you haven't internalized it, you have to do that first. Like before, like at the end of this live stream or whatever, go and look up monetary. This is the exact title of it: Monetary Policy Strategies for a Low Neutral Interest Rate World, November 30th, 2018. You have to do this, right? So in this speech, he clearly states it, all right? Today we face an altogether different set of problems stemming from a very low neutral interest rate. That is the short-term real interest rate consistent with an economy operating at its potential alongside low and stable inflation. Ironically, the problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. Now, here I'm going to explain what it is that's happening, okay? Now, again, I apologize. YouTube flips the camera, so it's going to be a mirror image. You have to look at it like opposite, all right? So maybe if after we're uploaded or done here, we'll flip the video around so you can actually see it properly. But to understand that, you're looking at this in a reversed image. When the Federal Reserve drops the Fed funds rate down to zero and they are operating at the effective lower bound, what was taking place at the same time as the neutral interest rate was also falling. And it was coming right down and falling right along with the Fed funds rate as they were operating at what they called the zero interest rate policy. So the Federal Reserve could not drop interest rates far enough below the neutral level to actually stimulate the economy. Oh, here, give me 1 second, guys. Let me push you back up here. Okay, so they could not actually stimulate the economy because they could not get far enough below that neutral level, right? So as the neutral interest rate was falling, the Fed was stuck at this lower bound of zero with inability to actually stimulate the economy. This is super important to understand because as time goes on, we get into a point in which that the Federal Reserve was trying to operate in what they refer to as autopilot, right? And so over the quantitative easing where they tried to expand the balance sheet from $850 billion to over $4.5 trillion, they operated at this level until, 2016 or so, where they started to incrementally move the Fed funds rate up in something they called autopilot program, where they had the Fed funds rate ticking up a 0.25 percentage point every quarter without hesitation. Like there was like no rhyme or reason to their efforts. They were saying, hey, we're doing this regardless. Doesn't matter what happens within the economy. So now the Federal Reserve was able to get the Fed funds rate up to about 2.5%. And then they started having issues, right? They had to lower the Fed funds rate a percentage point or so. And then COVID kicked in and they dropped it back down to the lower bound of zero. Okay, so during that time, the Federal Reserve was not able to get their ammunition back because the Federal Reserve would typically want to use 5 percentage points in order to stimulate the economy. And even if they were to drop it, they would not get far enough below the neutral level in order to provide any kind of stimulating effect to the economy. It just simply was just stuck at this lower bound of zero. Okay. So COVID kicks in, massive pandemic, massive, expansion of the money supply, stimulus packages, and inflationary expectation that just runs absolutely crazy, right? Everybody has this belief that the Federal Reserve and their efforts of quantitative easing and, all the stimulus packages and everything else is going to cause a hyperinflationary scenario that is going to completely destroy the entire globe. Now, this was a pretty common belief. Here, let me scoot up a little closer. So this was a pretty common belief of a lot of people out there who were looking at the Federal Reserve and trying to study the monetary policy to understand what it is that was taking place out there. And this was a very common belief, right? All the money printer go burr, prices go up. What else do you need to know? Okay. The problem with this is that when the Federal Reserve took interest rates back to zero, right? And they kept it extra low, extra long for an extended period of time. Then they moved rates up dramatically, up to, what was it, 5.5%? All right, this move right here, where it created the inflation expectation that was elevated, started to do something with the neutral interest rate. The neutral interest rate that had been operating at the very close to zero itself started to rise on the elevated inflation expectations. So if you pull inflation and inflation expectations higher, you will pull the neutral interest rate ever higher. All right. So now we get closer to where we are today. Sorry. I'm trying to, these caps are already getting kind of dry, or these pens are getting kind of dry, so I'm trying not to dry them out. All right, so we get closer to where we are today. So the Fed funds, right, in relation to the neutral interest rate, right? Because what we had was the Fed raised rates, plateaued out for a while, dropped it down to about 4.25, and then plateaued out like that, right? So this is when they were operating at the lower bound of zero, trying to let inflation run extra hot, extra long for an extended period of time to make up for the fact that they failed to achieve the 2% target over the previous 10 years. This is when they decided that they were going to raise rates, and they did it quite dramatically and very fast. They plateaued out for a while and then dropped it down. Something very interesting was stated right there. This is January of 2025. Let me bring up Michelle Bowman's speech. This is what she has to say. I'm trying to blast through this, guys. There's so much information that I could be giving you, but it's already overwhelming as it is. This is what she has to say here. Boom, Michelle Bowman. Again, this is January 9th of 2025. All right, January 9th of 2025, Reflections on 2020, this is the title, Reflections on 2024 Monetary Policy Performance and Lessons of the Banking Regulation. The target range now reflects 100 basis point cuts since September, and the policy rate is now closer to my estimates of its neutral level, which is higher than before the pandemic. What she is saying right here, this is where she's saying this, is that since the September rate cuts, right, this happened in September, since the rate cuts, the target range had dropped 100 basis points, reflects 100 basis points of cuts since September, and the policy rate is now closer to my estimates of its neutral level, which is higher than before the pandemic. So what she is saying here is that the neutral interest rate, which was very close to zero, had been rising on the elevated inflation expectation and had moved ever closer to where the Fed funds rate is. She is saying that it's not too far off from where the current Fed funds is now, making the economy neutral, not restrictive, not accommodating, neutral, or very close to it. She goes on to say this. I also continue to be concerned that the current stance of policy may not be as restrictive as many see it. Given the ongoing strength in the economy, it seems unlikely that the overall level of interest rates and borrowing costs are providing meaningful restraint. Let me read that again. I also continue to be concerned that the current stance of policy may not be as restrictive as others may see it. Given the ongoing strength in the economy, it seems unlikely that the overall level of interest rates and borrowing costs are providing meaningful restraint. It's because the neutral interest rate is rising. Here's something that I found very interesting. You think about it, the Federal Reserve says that they want their Fed funds rate at neutral. They want it at neutral. They want to have the Fed funds rate at neutral. They don't want to be accommodating or restricting the economy. They want to be at neutral. What did Jerome Powell just say? Jerome Powell said that they can't lower interest rates because of the tariffs. Because the tariffs are raising the neutral interest rate to the current level of the Fed funds rate, the Fed is now neutral position on account of the rising of inflation expectations due to the belief of the tariffs that are coming. This is why the Fed is not moving, is because the Fed wanted to be at neutral. And this is what they are getting. The September rate cut got them very close to neutral, and if the tariffs didn't raise the inflation expectation, I don't know what would have, and the neutral interest rate would definitely have risen from that. They are at neutral now. This is why the economy is so resilient. I have been saying this over and over again. I have been trying to share this with everybody to try and explain to them that monetary policy is not what it is that they think it is, and that the Federal Reserve is seeing it way differently than anybody else is seeing it. When you look at this information, when you look at what it is that they are saying and what it is that they were talking about literally decades ago leading up to this exact moment, this is the most accurate way of looking at it. Right? And of course, you got to flip it around and look at it the other way, but you know what I mean. Nothing came down in rates. We're at 20%. Okay, we have stagflation. The stock market's not the only economy. All right. Printing money is not creating assets, but stealing them. Only few things to pay it off, gold and silver. It's all made up, bro. Oh, well, then I guess you don't need to pay attention, do you? All right. But what does it mean? It doesn't mean anything. It gets the people going. What are you talking about? Okay. All made up how to eat real food. Alligator Island is a real place. I thought it was a joke. All right. Asset inflation is going up 25% per year. Prove me wrong. Assets. There you go. Asset inflation. All right. Actually, Chairman Powell said that he does not want to lower rates because of the credible threat of tariffs. Right. Tariffs, the credible threat of tariffs has risen the neutral interest rates. He's not going to come out and say, hey, man, the tariffs has risen the neutral interest rate. The tariffs has created an inflation expectation that risen the neutral interest rate is now put the Fed funds rate in a neutral position. He doesn't come out and say that. If he came out and say that, all their entire monetary policy would essentially become undone. He is going to tell you, we can't cut rates because of tariffs. He didn't lie. That's a straight up truth-telling mofo right there. He said he can't do it because of tariffs. Tariffs has risen your inflation expectation, which raised the neutral interest rate, has put the economy now in a neutral position financially. Hell, Michelle Bowman was saying it just not even 6 months, or 6 months ago she was saying it. All right? I mean, how does she say it? What does she say? She goes, the target range now reflects 100 basis points of cuts since September, and the policy rate is now closer to my estimates of neutral, which is higher than before the pandemic. They're close to neutral. If they weren't close to neutral 6 months ago, why wouldn't they be any closer to neutral did the inflation expectations fall? I know inflation has, right? But that's all based on government numbers. The expectations that people have due to the tariffs, that is quite elevated. And that is what's raising the neutral interest rate and making the economy less restricted on the Fed funds rate, from the Fed funds rate. Sorry, guys. I am trying to pin this thing in place, and I just suck at what I do here. Okay. All right, moving on. All right, yeah, a guy wanted $2 million. I offered $115K. Okay. All right, you have guys been listening to the big beautiful bill. I'm 3 hours into it. I will give you my report in the morning. Okay. I appreciate it, deplorable. I'm not going to read through it. How did they have the guts to pull off COVID-19 and know they weren't going to cause deflationary spiral? Yeah, that's something that's a really good. Okay, here. This is something that you should download and read, right? You should read through the entire thing. Let me see if I can bring it up here. Oops, it must not be that one. Okay. It's right here. This is called the Finance and Economic Decision Series. Oops. Come on, open up. All right. Division Series of Research and Statistics and Monetary Affairs, Federal Reserve Board, Washington, D.C. Okay. The title of this is How Robust Are Our Makeup Strategies to the Key Assumptions? The makeup strategies. This is 2020. The makeup strategy works best when the public understands, believes, and reacts to policymakers' commitment to offset misses in inflation from the 2% objective in the future. In particular, makeup strategies are most powerful when policymakers can influence the public inflation expectations. In doing so, policymakers face a dynamic tension. They must maintain long-run inflation expectations at around 2%. They must expectations around 2% objective while at the same time moving short-run inflation expectations in response to the new strategy. This is a 20-page document on how they were going to increase the inflation expectations using this makeup strategy. They were going to deploy it through social media, through music videos, through all the publications that are out there, because they know that people who watch the Federal Reserve are pretty much a handful of subculture of people who follow macroeconomics. Most people just don't listen. So they were going to have to force feed the information into the people. They had a strategy for it. Now, you want to know something that's really interesting? I have a video that we did on it. I don't know exactly where the video is right now, so I can't just bring it up. But ultimately, the makeup strategy became irrelevant during COVID. They didn't pull COVID off. They had a strategy they already had a makeup strategy to try and increase the inflationary expectations within the people, the inflationary scenario. This document talks about how they were going to use communications to do that. Right? The COVID pandemic made this strategy irrelevant, but the goals of the strategy were accomplished. Right? See, that's the difference inside of this. This strategy had a goal. The goal was achieved. They didn't need to use the strategy. They didn't need to deploy it. I'm sure they deployed some things of the strategy, but ultimately, COVID was perfect timing to save the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. It couldn't have worked any better. All right, let's go on here. Do you work spreadsheets? I don't. I don't work computer much at all, except for like writing up orders, special orders, POs. That's it. That's all I do on the computer, and then make YouTube videos. All right. We need to rein in free market capitalism and learn to protectionism. No, I don't think it'll work, Mike. I don't mean to just blow you off, your comment off. I mean, I really appreciate the views and comments on the channel and stuff like that. But the problem that you're going to end up facing is that there's no way that you're going to be able to get people to collectively do anything. All right. And so when you talk about reeling in free market capitalism, you're basically telling me that you're going to deny me the ability to position myself in order to have an income secured off of interest rates beyond that of my occupation. If you're telling me that, then I'm gonna tell you no, thank you. All right, because that's what I'm going for. I'm going to be a capitalist. I want to get a return on my capital investments that's going to have a pay that's going to, or a secured interest of income beyond that of my occupation, so that I can cut my living expenses as low as possible so that I don't have to work very hard. That's my goal. Right? And if you're telling me that I shouldn't do that, well, I mean, that's what I'm doing. So, you might not want to watch the channel because you're benefiting me. I don't know. All right. You can reel in free market capitalism. That is how it is all around the world. There is no free market. It's just ideology. All right. That will never happen. Thoughts on Scott Bessent and Secretary Treasury? How do you think he's doing? I don't know. Like, I mean, to be honest with you, I think most of it is pretty well par for the course. Like, I mean, if anybody was to ask me what is it that we can expect in the future, I'd say more war, more debt, and more separation between the rich and the poor, and I think these guys are accommodating that situation. I think it's just best for us to understand that that's what's happening, and that it's not a good or bad thing, but it does have meaning that we can say, hey, we need to take this information and do better for ourselves. That's what I think is happening out there. So I don't think he's doing a good or bad job. I think it's just going to end everything that they do, all their efforts is just going to end up creating more war, more debt, and more separation between the rich and the poor. And I just have very little doubt that. How I position myself to deal with it is, that's the key to all this. All right. The people that own a couple acres of land with a garden and animals will at least have food. Thoughts on the Fed after Powell's term? My thoughts on Fed after Powell's term? Well, it's going to be a huge, profound nothing burger because it doesn't really matter if Powell is there or not. There's 11 other voting members with 5 alternates and 2 advisors that help make up the Federal Reserve's monetary policy. So the only difference that I think you're going to actually experience with the different Fed chairman is the voice that is delivering the message. And that's it. Like, the message won't change. They speak on behalf of the FOMC. They are not in charge of anything. It is like, people like who say, what is it going to happen? Powell should be fired, all this other stuff. And I'm like, if people who are bringing this up and actually having discussion, and you're kind of dragging me into it too, is really just kind of a waste of time and energy because it's really insignificant. It doesn't matter. You got to think about all the other members of the FOMC. Michelle Bowman's a huge influential person on the FOMC. John Williams is huge influential person on the FOMC. These people have a profound impact on what it is that's going to happen with monetary policy, and people are more worried about Powell, the deliverer of the message. I mean, I'm more worried about the people, the voting members. How many times have I brought up, Michelle Bowman and Goolsbee and, Jefferson and, all these people? Like, I mean, I got a list of speeches here that breaks down the monetary policy through the communications of the central bankers to the other central bankers, and people are stuck on the message that's being delivered to them. Like, I don't listen to them. I don't think I've ever really listened to Jerome Powell. I mean, I kind of bring him up in some of the talks that we do, but how many times have I, other than his speech that he gave over 4 years ago, 5 years ago, what is it that I even talk about Jerome Powell? I don't. I talk about all the other voting members of the FOMC and what it is that they are talking and communicating like. Because that gives me the understanding of why it is the economy is far less restricted than anybody ever realized. Why it is we're sitting in a hot economy right now. I'm the only one who is delivering you that message unless you go through the Federal Reserve itself. This sucks. Hold on one second, guys. Let me see if I can fix this. All right. Let me see if that helps out. All right. All right, I imagine the irony. We are in top 10 per capita. Top 10 per capita. Plus, we are world reserve currency, and yet on economic crisis. Well, I mean, everybody. Then that's the thing. Like, the economic crisis is the meaning that you have decided to give it. If you are in a crisis scenario, or at least you're feeling in crisis, this is really the message that you have given or received from the information that you have been delivered. That has been delivered to you. I don't think about a crisis situation. I think about how it is that I am now sitting better than I have ever sat in my entire life, doing the things that I am doing, looking at the economy, thinking, okay, I know it's dangerous. I know there's some crazy stuff that's happening out there. How is it that I position myself to deal with this accordingly? That's not hard. People are upset because they want to maintain their current status quo and have nothing happen to them. Their ego is looking for their security, and they want to be feeling that everything that they are doing is 100% appropriate. And so when they look out there, they say, hey, politician, I'm voting for you to make sure that everything is awesome the way I am doing it. That's literally what people are saying. I mean, that's they may not say it in that many words, but I think about it as just like, I don't expect that politician to do anything for me. Like, literally nothing. In fact, I'm going to try and position myself so that anything that they do doesn't affect me, right? And if it does affect me, it affects me very small and in a way that doesn't really hurt because I never really anticipated getting anything from them anyway. I don't accept their promises, and I don't anticipate them doing anything of benefit to me. And once you let them go, like the government is worthless to me, They can't do anything that benefits me whatsoever, and I don't expect them to, and they're just going to take some from me, and I'm going to have to figure out how to work around that. Once you have accepted all that, you can then benefit from the idea of what it is that you're doing out there. Because until you have accepted the idea that, yes, they do it, and I don't care, to the point that it says they're not damaging me, but I can just benefit in this society, in this economy, in this current environment, no matter what is thrown at me, then you'll excel. That's all there is to it. You can come up with all the reason and excuses on why you fail, and you will totally be right about it. Like, you don't have to prove me right. You're right. You can fail. You'll fail right now. You can also be successful right now. And if you don't believe me, just look at people who are doing it. Just think about the people who are saying, man, I am doing better now than I did last year, and the year before, and the year before that, and the year before that. And there are people out there right now who are doing that, and they are successful people who are operating in the same economy that you are operating in. You have chosen to give it a crisis scenario that is failing you, when you could be saying, hey, how do I take advantage of the situation? It's like, I don't know how else to tell people this. The more I study economics, the people come out and say, dude, you're just nothing but a doomsdayer. And I'm like, really? I don't think so. I don't think I'm a doomsdayer at all. I mean, in fact, I think I'm very encouraging and uplifting and trying to get people to get motivated and do things in their life. Let's go check out the super chat. Where did it go? Holy moly, there it is. Okay. Off, $1.99. Have some capitalism. Thank you very much, Off. I appreciate the $1.99. You're very nice, man. I appreciate the support for the channel. Carter, it's late evening where Simon is. Yeah, I'm on the Pacific Northwest coast. D-Lee Crypto, you don't think Biden and Trump have impacted your life positively or negatively? No, I don't. I don't give it a meaning that I get a positive or negative impact from anything out there other than the actions that I have taken and the meaning that I have decided. That's the only thing you have control over, is the meaning that you have decided to give something. That's it. There is no other hidden meaning other than the one that you have given it. Right? Everything is a neutral no matter what. No matter what, it's all a neutral. You decide what meaning it's going to have. And now I know this is an extreme example, but when you look at it in an extreme way, it gives you a better clarity of the point that I'm trying to make, is that a terrorist attack, for most people who experience it, who see it, who witness this happening, it's a very evil thing that's happened. For other people, it's a religious experience. Think about that. It's the meaning. It's the same event. We can give it any meaning we want. We choose to give it a particular meaning because of the horrific event that has happened. Other people look at it as a very spiritual thing that just happened. That is crazy to think about, but it literally comes down to that. All comes down to the meaning that you have given it. So no, Biden doesn't impact my life. Trump doesn't impact my life. Obama didn't impact my life. None of those people did. The only way they impacted my life is when I decided to let that impact my life, by incorporating that into my belief system, into my energy, into my ideas of what it is that I was planning on doing based on what it is that they were saying and communicating to me. Once I let it go and said, they don't affect my life anymore. They don't make decisions that affect me in a way that says, hey, they're responsible for my life. They can't do that. They can't possibly do that to me. All right? I'm the only one who could do that, because what I did or did not hear, I gave meaning to. If I didn't listen to him, if I was just an old man sitting over here gardening, growing vegetables and selling them out of a stand, and for whatever retirement investment that I had, I was able to pay my taxes, and I didn't talk to anybody, and I didn't watch TV, and I didn't read the news, how much impact would I really feel so long as everything was the same as the day before? All right? Now, I know so many old people who sit in their house watching Fox News, and they come and they talk to me with this anger, or CNN or whatever it is that they're watching, right? They come back and they have this anger, and they're all lit up about this energy that they have now incorporated from this information that they received. And I'm thinking, how old are you that you feel that this information is going to change your life for the better? I don't get it. Why aren't you enjoying the afternoon? All right. Why aren't you watching something pleasant? Why are you watching this stuff when it doesn't have any benefit to your life? Are you going to take this information and use it to invest? All right? Are you using this information to better your life in some other way, or are you using it just to get angry with? Because most of the people that I see, they use it to get angry with. And I don't even think they know why. It's because what ends up happening is they get onto what's referred to as a power pendulum. All right? The power pendulum is an energy sucker. As soon as you get into it and you start thinking about it and you get on board with this power pendulum, it takes all the energy from you. And then when it's all done and it's crashed, you're left completely exhausted of your energy, having put everything into it, trying to convince people to get on the pendulum with you, to follow this way of thought, to blame this particular other people out there, to do whatever. And then when it's all said and done and it's all over, you're completely exhausted and expelled of your energy, and the people who had started the pendulum had sucked it all from you. That's what ends up happening with politics. How many times have you thought about a particular political event and it got you all fired up and you wanted to communicate that to everybody, and now nobody even has any kind of clue or talks about it anymore? It's just completely evaporated, and you wonder, I had so much passion for that thing at the time that they were talking. They had me lit up. And then now it's gone. And I was acting kind of weird in front of my friends and family about it and stuff because of how passionate I felt about it, and now they're all just evaporated. They're gone. Where is everybody? Right? How many times does that happen to you? It happened to me all the time when I was into politics. All the time that would happen. There would be some political event taking place, or some idea of something going down, or some accusation of what it is that this other party was about ready to pull off, and I would try to get everybody to be excited and lit up about it, and it just fizzled away, and it wouldn't have turned into anything at all. And I think, man, what a waste of time and energy and thought. I started following the money. Woohoo. Talk about a huge change to my life. I abandoned everything that was New World Orders, conspiratorial concept, anything, and I dove headfirst right into monetary policy, and I never looked back, and I never took my eyes off the money. And it benefited me in a profound way. When I realized that the central banking system, the Federal Reserve, had basically failed at their monetary policy, and their communication became their monetary policy, I couldn't believe what I was finding. And I realized, man, the two communications that happen out there, what it is that most people are hearing from the Federal Reserve, and then what it is that they communicate to the other central bankers. Right? How many people are talking about this? Rising of neutral interest rate, getting ever closer to the Fed funds rate, and the threat of tariffs had only put the Federal Reserve in a position in which they can no longer cut rates because they're at neutral, right where they wanted to be. Like, to me, this was a huge sign to the elitist members out there. The Federal Reserve screamed to them, we're at neutral. We're at neutral. They didn't say it straight up, but they said the tariffs put them in a position in which they can't cut. They're way close to neutral. Michelle Bowman was warning about it 7 months ago. You don't think, did the inflation expectation come down or up over the last 7 months, 6-7 months? All right, what time is it? How long are we going to go for? An hour? If you guys want to go longer than an hour, get the thumbs up to, 100. It's at 72 right now. We got 182 people watching. Get it up to 100 likes and we'll continue onward. I love to watch the circus. Make people work 2-3 jobs to survive drains them and makes them docile. I don't think that you have to work 2 or 3 jobs. I think you should work 2 or 3 jobs. And the reason why you should work it is because you don't really have any other choice. The economic environment is no longer in a condition in which you can screw off with an 8-hour-a-day job. You have to work far more than that. What do you think I'm doing? I work an 8-hour job. I come out here on YouTube. I have a side hustle calling bingo. I do affiliate sales. I do all kinds of things to try and bring in income because you know what? It is too difficult to make it here on an 8-hour-a-day job, and I'm not expecting anything to change out there considering that this is only going to get worse going into the future. Accept it. Please. Accept the idea that you have no other choice but to understand that the Cantillon effect is separating the rich from the poor, and every time they pour new money into the system, the problem gets ever increasingly worse. We are not in a position in which that the good American manufacturing job is going to provide enough for the household, wife, kids, all the vacations, retirement, all that other stuff. That was a thing of the past. We can understand this through Cantillon's essay. We cover this quite regularly. All right? Go and read Cantillon's essay on economic theory. There's a link down in the description to an Amazon affiliate link. You do not have to buy that essay off of Amazon. You can get it for free at the Mises Institute. Just click on the link to learn how to spell a Cantillon essay, and then go get it for free at the Mises Institute. Just know that everything you put in your cart for the next 24 hours after clicking on that link, I'm going to get a little commission for. So go and buy a whole bunch of stuff. Just click on that link first, and I will get a commission from Amazon for all the purchases that you have made. That's a great way to support the Uneducated Economist. Simple, easy way. And I don't mean to get all like lit up and angry about it, but it's just easier to understand that there's nothing you can change about the external. And in fact, the external is nothing more than a reflection of what it is that you're thinking and feeling on the inside. When the New World Order was coming after me and taking me out and causing me to pay in pain and misery and suffering, it was definitely happening. I mean, it was definitely happening. The New World Order was definitely taking me out. I had no doubt. In fact, I still don't have any doubt about it. But the day that I gave them up and I said, I'm not going to follow you anymore, and I'm not going to blame you anymore for my problems, and I'm going to give up alcohol, and I'm going to start focusing in on things that are going to benefit me and my family, and I'm going to try and do things that are going to be more in line with being useful and helpful to this universe. When I started acting and thinking that way, and I abandoned the whole idea that the New World Order was trying to take me out, well, guess what? They left me alone. It was weird. All of a sudden, I started advancing. I started doing well. I started finding myself in one of the most expensive towns in the entire nation per capita of people 10 to 50,000, right? Here I am living in the 10th most expensive place in the entire nation. I'm able to pull it off, and I have no education, no college, degrees, no business, no family inheritance, none of that stuff. So when people say, man, you can't do it in this world, they're holding you down, they're keeping you back. Okay, yes, they are. They're definitely doing that to you. I agree. They did it to me too. And I mean, I agree. They definitely do that to you. I can't deny that. I can't argue with you on that. But I can tell you how to get out of it. I can tell you how they can leave you alone. I can tell you how it doesn't bother you anymore and it doesn't impact your life anymore. Much like the politics, because I lived through that life. I did that exact thing. When you say, how is it that Biden and Trump doesn't impact your life? Same way I don't let the New World Order impact my life. There was a time I did. There was a time I let all those people impact my life. I made it that way. I internalized the information and made it that way. And then blamed a lot of other people for problems. All right. If you want to know what's coming next, just watch movies and TV shows. Hollywood projects what's coming next through movies and content. Yeah, I can see that, especially like, some of the Simpsons episodes are quite almost like scary how accurate some of the things are. They will never leave you alone. All right, we have another, yeah, you're right. I guess at some point after about 10 years, I should figure they'll become bothering me again, but they haven't yet. But I guess it could happen. Yeah. All right, we will have another sovereign debt crisis, and will we have another sovereign debt crisis, and will the dollar spike, causing a crash like 2008? And if so, when? I couldn't tell you when, but yes, I do. All right. And in fact, that's a great question. It's a great question because this is a problem that the Federal Reserve is facing, and it's one that they have been thinking and contemplating for decades. This is not going to be an alarm to the Federal Reserve. Now, many of you know and heard me talk about this particular spot in the Bernanke speech, Deflation and How to Prevent it from Ever Occurring Here. Same speech with the gold machine. Understanding that The demand for dollars outside of the United States is huge. Countries, corporations, individuals have written debts that are due in dollars. They don't have anything to do with the United States. They don't have anything to do with our banking system, our government, our corporations, our people, nothing. But these debts that are due in dollars, they demand dollars. So when these debts come due, the demand for dollars go up. Now, if these debts come due in a massive wave, the spike in demand for dollars increases. If the liquidity is not there, the liquidity shortage, the liquidity crisis begins as these debts are being demanded in US dollars. The Federal Reserve is needing to provide the world with liabilities. Those are the dollars to pay those debts. If they don't provide the world with the dollars to pay those debts, the dollar begins to strengthen and everything begins to crash. Stock market comes down, housing market comes down, gold comes down, everything begins to come down, and the dollar value goes up because so much demand for dollars out there to pay off these debts. That's if the Federal Reserve doesn't provide enough liquidity, enough of their liabilities. The Federal Reserve notes the dollars out there. So now the Federal Reserve has a problem. If they are going to provide the world with enough liquidity to pay off all these dollar-denominated debts that exist outside the world that doesn't have anything to do with the United States, but would definitely cause a problem for the United States if that dollar was to start strengthening dramatically, the Fed is going to be obligated to try and provide the world with the liabilities, and this is going to force them into purchasing U.S. treasuries, which will send the United States on an unsustainable debt path. When they are creating their liabilities, they have to buy something. They have to buy an asset in order to create the liability. Generally, they buy U.S. treasuries. If they are to meet any kind of significant rise in demand for liquidity that is outside of the United States being caused by these debt obligations that had nothing to do with the United States, and it is of mass proportion, they would end up sending the United States into an unsustainable debt path trying to buy up all these U.S. treasuries to provide the world with that liquidity. Here we go. The Federal Reserve knows this. Here's their answer. This is again all the way back to November of 2002. 23 years now, right? 23 years ago, Ben Bernanke addressed this exact situation. The Fed can inject money into the economy in still other ways. For example, the Fed has the authority to buy foreign government debt as well as domestic government debt. See, they buy domestic government debt. Everybody knows that. But they don't buy foreign government debt. But they have the authority to do it. They don't need to ask permission. This is something that they already have in their wheelhouse, in their toolbox, and the capabilities to do. He just said it right here 23 years ago. There could be a situation in which that the demand for dollars just explodes and we're going to need to find something to put on the balance sheet in order to do this quantitative easing. The Fed has the authority to buy foreign government debt. Holy moly. Potentially, this class of asset offers a huge scope for the Fed's operation, as the quantity of foreign assets eligible for purchase by the Fed is several times the stock of government U.S. debt, of U.S. government debt. So you see this? Here they can buy the debt of a foreign nation, put it on the balance sheet, and issue out their liabilities, which is essentially dollars. Holy moly, can you imagine what that looks like? Makes you wonder why they're so eager to get into stablecoins and cryptocurrencies, central bank digital currencies. See, once you start buying the debt of a foreign nation and you put it on their balance sheet, who's to say where that money's going to fly to and where it goes? But if you have it in a stablecoin cryptocurrency, now you can control the direction, the time, the interest rates. You control everything, right? Where, what, when, who, why. It's like a central banker's wet dream. And here, Ben Bernanke is saying, We already have the authority to buy pretty much all the debt of the world. Pretty crazy, right? Okay. 54 minutes into it with 101 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. We got 175 people watching. If you want to continue watching this live stream beyond the 1 hour mark, be sure to hit that like button by hitting that thumbs up button and getting it up to, what, 125. You get it up to 125 in the next 6, 7 minutes, 5 minutes right now. We'll continue on the live stream for another 15, 20 or so. I'm pretty sure DOGE was cover for data collection. Judgment Day will be when AI exposes all your worst comments. All our worst comments. Right. It'll come after for everything you ever thought, said, communicated, joked around about. Went to a taqueria in New York, got 4 tacos and a drink, $30, and that doesn't include tip. My goodness. Yeah, I had somewhat of a similar experience. I got like Sarah and I stopped at a little bar in town, just trying to get a snack and waiting for Freddie. Like Freddie and Mac were at a birthday party, and so we were just kind of hanging out downtown. Anyway, she got like a sandwich, and I got like I don't know, 6, 7, 8 chicken wings, something like that, and a non-alcoholic beer and a Coke, and it was like I don't know, like $45 for everything, and I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, nah, this isn't gonna work. We got to find different restaurants if we're gonna do this. Stop eating out, you broke maniacs. Yeah. All right. It's kind of funny. The richest man in the world is saying, no, don't crush the poor anymore. They just can't handle it. Who's saying that? Can't they use the power to control countries picking and choosing who get liquidity help without creating a stablecoin? Oh, yeah, I imagine they could. And in fact, I imagine they do that in a lot of ways when they buy do like currency swaps and buying up the debt of another nation when the government is typically involved in that. In fact, Bernanke actually says, he goes into it, he says, I need to trade carefully because the economy is a complex, interconnected system. The Fed purchases of liabilities of foreign governments have the potential to affect a number of financial markets, including the market of foreign exchanges. In the United States, the Department of Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, is the lead agencies for making international economic policies, including policy towards the dollar. The Secretary of Treasury has expressed the view that the determination of the value of the U.S. dollar should be left up to the free market forces. So he's already saying that, like, ultimately, this isn't their jurisdiction to deal with this. This is more of the Treasury Department's jurisdiction to deal with the value of the dollar and the foreign exchanges and all that other stuff. So, like, could they do it? Yeah, I imagine they could. They already had the legal authority to do it, and they thought of the idea long before central bank digital currencies. However, having central bank digital currencies and the stable coin and the idea of track tracing and controlling and keeping that particular currency in particular locations or giving it a timeline or something of that nature is going to give the central banking systems a hell of a lot better ability to prevent the unseen circumstances, the unforeseen circumstances that will definitely arise from doing this. There's going to happen no matter what, right? But at least in their mind, at least from what I would think from the stablecoin aspect of it, they would have better control over crisis situations in this fashion with a stablecoin kind of thing. So could they do it? I'm sure they could, yeah. Trump's strategy: start a problem, blame someone else, pretend to fix it more without fixing it, and then start another new problem and forget about the first problem. Wash and rinse. Yeah, that sounds pretty much like it. Elon Musk is saying, stop spending more money, silly. Weren't they like best friends? I mean, I thought they were best friends. They were like best friends forever. I mean, did they say they're sorry? Like maybe like, maybe they need a little snuggle time or something like that, get their feelings straight with each other. Like, I don't get how it is that these two could be like, man, I just love this dude right here, to all of a sudden they're like, man, this guy's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's doing. Like, it's just, Like if this is like part of the whole, like, throw you off the track so that you pay attention to something else. I mean, other than what is important, I don't know what is, man. Because that just, I just laughed so hard over that. I'm sure. I'm guessing maybe if they just said they were sorry. I think if they just did that, then everything would be cool. All right. Trump is using DOGE to look into Elon's federal agents. Oh, federal grants. Trump is invented to Elon's birthday. Invited. Oh, Trump isn't invited to Elon's birthday? No, that's sad. Don't say that. I mean, give it time. I think it'll be okay. I think they'll be all right. They'll be friends again. Yeah, they'll be buddies. I mean, you know, maybe if like Trump gave back Elon's bouncy bar, he'd be bouncy ball. He'd be fine. Like, I mean, he just wants his ball back. All right. Could they use the stablecoin liquidity to bankrupt countries that don't fall in line? I mean, Jake, yeah, you can use your imagination to pretty much say, yeah, they can do anything they want with that, right? I mean, they can use it to put all the screws to you. Here's the problem: they're not going to do it at first because people wouldn't accept it. They would be like all pissed off if they're like, hey, stablecoin, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later they're getting screwed over by it. They're going to get introduced in a way that nobody notices it's happening. And then even after it's all done, they won't have any idea that it's a stable coin that's taken place anyway. So once they're used to it, once they have grown accustomed to it, it may take quite a while for this to happen, like go into a generation of people. But once it eventually takes place, then that's it. They can start turning the screws, because it'll be too late at that point. And, the power will corrupt. The ability to do it will eventually corrupt the power to do it, which is sad. But, just knowing that it's going to happen, I mean, at least that way you can like deal with the situation a little better, Are we done? You guys want to keep going? We got 114 likes with 176 people watching. We're an hour into this live stream. I think we should probably call it quits. I think it was a good one. Honestly, the idea of the Fed funds rate, I know like it's all backwards and everything, but if you can understand what I wrote down here earlier in this video about the neutral interest rate rising and thinking about things that Michelle Bowman was saying just 6 months ago about how the Fed funds rate is pretty much at neutral or very close to neutral. That was like 6 months ago. Elevated tariff and elevated inflation expectations from tariffs. I can only think that the Federal Reserve is very close to neutral as it is right now, which is making the economy a hell of a lot less restricted than anybody ever realized. The expectations, the belief, and the way that people behave does have an impact into the markets that does create like an economic event. And so for a lot of people who were just take for example, how many people were preliminarily increasing their lumber prices and their bids on their projects before the tariff on Canadian lumber took place. That never took place. All those people suffer the consequences from that, right? All the people who not only signed the contract for it because they didn't have to pay the higher price, but then the other people had to go like, oh, I jumped the gun and increased my prices without ever really actually having an increase in prices. I was just doing it to act preemptively, and it really bit me in the ass because now I have to apologize for doing that because nothing ever took place. All right? See, there's a real economic event that happens. It's not like it didn't happen. It did happen, All right, Michael. Thank you so much for the $9.99. Going to keep me around for a little bit, right? Elon and Trump best friends. Yeah, they're best friends forever. They are. They're just, they're having a little fight. They'll get back together again, They'll be, I mean, it's hard to keep Trump off the computer, with all the looking at the OnlyFans all day and stuff like that. And Elon Musk, he's getting good at bouncing that ball off of as many flat surfaces as he can get off of a room. But, I mean, sometimes there's a little battle in between that. And all right, the markets love tax cuts for wealthy and stable 1%. All right. Scott stagflation while stock market going green is not really connected. You are too smart, Simon. Well, I appreciate it, I guess. Paul, no, I appreciate you, man. I don't like to think of myself as necessarily being smart. I'm figuring this stuff out, at least from the ideas and, information that I have gathered. And I don't see anybody else doing it in this fashion and coming up with these ideas and these, at least these talking points that I've tried to find. And I'm not afraid to come out here and share it with you guys, even though I know I'm like literally the only one. I'm out here like essentially out on a limb all by myself, right? All right, you are too smart, Simon. You are right. I am Paul from Florida. Yep. Look at platinum. Just saying. Nobody talks much about the metal. Just saying, look the normal way and look the rare way. Love you, bro. I appreciate you, Paul. I like platinum. I like the idea of precious metals in general. It doesn't really matter what it is. I think some of them have a little bit more of a unique position than others. And I'm not trying to deny platinum. I own a little tiny piece of platinum, like a 10th ounce of platinum, which is really cool, I think. I think it's cool. But the thing that I find with silver and gold is that it's really easy to unload it. Like, there's nobody who question, like, there's a few people who would question it, but really, like, unloading silver is probably one of the easiest things in the entire world to do when it comes to precious metals. Like, you can go down to the local tavern and probably find somebody who would give you, a decent amount. You're probably not going to get spot price, but you can get close to it. Hell, if you need to get a tank of gas to get out of Dodge, you have a silver coin, $20, whatever you want for it, or whatever they're willing to give you for it, and you can bail out. So silver's a pretty liquidable item when it comes to that. Platinum, you might have to have a little bit tighter network of people that that you might be able to unload that onto. So in that sense, like a speculative asset where you might be able to take it to a coin dealer and not have any problems taking it to that coin dealer. In that sense, that I think platinum's pretty cool. But if you're using it for like insurance policy purposes, like I think I would be purchasing precious metals for, then platinum may not necessarily be that easy liquidable item like silver would be, you know. And it can get expensive fast too. So, in that sense, like speculation and being able to take it back down to the coin dealer and sell it that way, then I think that would be like, a pretty good idea. In the idea of like all precious metals out there, and platinum could very much carry that uniqueness to it that would, move it up quite rapidly. Simon, I have switched over to fake beer too, or what they now call zero alcohol beer. It's really helping me to reduce my drinking. Well, good for you, Nathan, man. I really, I'm proud of you, dude, because I think like when you come to that understanding that a lot of times we have put ourselves in an alcohol-based consciousness and it's difficult to be making the appropriate decisions for yourself, I kind of just give it the idea that it's hard to excel, it's hard to advance, it's hard to move forward when you have the brakes on, right? And so switching over to the non-alcoholic beer or the zero beers, the zero alcohol beers, at least gives you some like feeling of normalcy that you have been living your entire life, especially like for a guy like me who drank, up until I was 40 years old. Like having a beer, like I enjoyed, like some people say, oh, beer's gross. Well, yeah, maybe, but you kind of grow to acquire the taste and you kind of like it. And so being able to have a non-alcoholic beer while hanging out at the bar or hanging out with friends, it gives you at least a feeling of somewhat of normalcy. And then you don't have to, get all, doped up off of it or, whatever. So it's good on you, man. And, the more you do it, the more you're going to find yourself actually like, you know, better things in life happening because of it. Like at least that was for me. I know I spent a lot of money at the bar and spent a lot of money on alcohol, and just the money that I was able to save was a huge change in my life. Uh, all right. I accidentally drank a whole bunch of alcohol, guys. I am sorry. I sound funny that way. That's why. Oh, if I sound funny, that's why. Hey, everybody does their thing, man. And more bars are now carrying assortment of zero alcohol beers and wine and they can make mocktails which are zero alcohol cocktails. Yep, a lot of places. It's cool because it's actually becoming quite a trend. A lot more people are moving into the non-alcoholic beers because, a lot of the same discoveries that I was finding is that your life kind of actually is much better. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy hanging out and drinking with my buddies. Like I wouldn't like at this point I wouldn't give it up. Like I would love the idea of saying I've never had consumed alcohol in my life, but I don't want to give up all the good times that I had hanging out with my buddies and alcohol happened to be involved. Like I don't want to give up all that stuff. I enjoyed the experiences that I had, but it was too much, and it took over, and it was absolutely deteriorating my life, and there was no way that I was going to do it modestly or in any kind of shape that would give me the ability to do what I did today. Like I just couldn't do it. All right, what are we doing here, guys? You want to call it quits? Like we got 135 people now watching with 126 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. But it is getting into a long live stream, and I think we should probably call it quits here pretty soon. It's nice that you can get something so you can hang out and people aren't worried if you're drinking or not. Yeah, because one of the things that I find is that everybody is just like, oh, cool, man. You don't drink. That's really cool, man. Congratulations on you. But then they don't want to hang out with you when they're drinking, right? Because they get all kind of like, oh, man, if you're not going to be on the same, like, kind of stupor that I am, then, it ain't fun to hang out with you. And so that ends up happening. Good night, John. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to head out to drinking weed too heavy for me. Drinking and weed? Yeah. No, I like the atmosphere of the bars. It's just energetic people and having fun. It's just as the night goes on and you're not drunk and people getting drunk or they become real douchebags. Yeah, and that ends up being the problem, Nathan. But again, that's kind of down to the meaning that you're giving it, and it's just like, you just kind of have to understand that's the energy you're going to be in. I know when I go to call bingo, I call bingo at the bar for 2.5 hours, 3 hours. Over the course of that time, the people go from being like very like sober when they walk in, cool, and then by the end of it, they're tipsy. They're like, and the conversations aren't as fun, as like, hey, how's the family? To like, I love that. Everybody loves to about, it is like, oh, good lord, So yeah, you kind of it loses its appeal. All right. Thank you, Simon. I do stack silver. It's my favorite. Silver is underpriced by about sevenfold, more like $200 per ounce. What do you think? Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Paul. I mean, if there was anything out there, it's silver is like to me, it's like almost like a no-brainer. It's so undervalued to gold. It's the most vital commodity known to man next to oil. It's like I don't know how else that I mean, like I really just don't see anything else. In fact, I literally don't see anything else that is as good as silver. Not stocks, bonds, crypto, none of that stuff. Real estate, nothing is as good as silver is. And it's not because it's going to go up in price and make you some kind of wealthy billionaire or whatever. It's just because there's literally nothing else that provides you with an insurance policy like silver can. It has very little downside risk. It has all the potential in the world to provide you with things that you need in your world. I know I've done it. I've bought 3 cars using silver. This is one of them. All right. All right. For bingo, it was a cig smoke I couldn't handle. Yeah. Yeah. In Oregon, you don't smoke in the bars. What's your reaction to nail today? Oh, Miles, I knew somebody was going to bring it up. Yeah, it's pretty good, but you got to understand, nail is an incredibly volatile stock, right? And so I have been dollar cost averaging into this particular leveraged ETF, which is probably the number one thing that an investor would tell you never, ever, 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 ever do, right? Is to buy into something like this. A leveraged ETF stock is literally a depleting asset at time. Like it's hard to, I don't want to get into it too much. Point being is that I have been dollar cost averaging into nail for the last 3 weeks. And right now I think that position is, I don't know. I mean, I had a heck of a move today. I think it's like maybe up 15% or something like that. I can't remember exactly where it's at. But I would expect that nail would probably be dropping dramatically and end up, under what I had paid for it, at any given moment. It is so off the charts. I'm going to dollar cost average into this for a while, and I'm thinking it's going to be something like a 2-year run. I don't know what's going to happen from it. It is a completely speculative move. Like, I have no idea if this is going to make money or lose money, and the investors out there are telling me that I'm going to lose money doing this. I don't know. We'll find out. I'm going to dollar cost average into this, and I'm thinking, assuming, speculating, believing that somewhere between now and the next 2 years, that thing is going to spike and I'm going to sell out pretty much very quickly in a dollar cost averaging move that is going to take like 15% position out of it every single week until like it's gone. That's my plan. I don't know if anybody understood what I was talking about, but that's my idea. That's what I have going for it. I don't take that to, like, I don't expect anybody else to do it. If you have any position in nail, that is on you, bro, not on me. That is completely on you. But that's what I'm planning on doing, is to dollar cost average once a week into nail for some time into the next 2 years and then sell out very quickly. Dollar cost average out very quickly. All right. Why do you think nail is going to be in 2 years run? For a couple of reasons. One is it's following builders and suppliers. And over the last year, we have had, and probably even more now, is we have had a depressed builder supplier market and building supply market. With that depressed market, you buy low, sell high, right? So you buy when things are bad, ugly, not looking good. Dollar cost averaging gives you the ability to buy little pieces at a time and not really feel the pain of dropping like $5,000 into a particular position or something and then find that it just drops dramatically. So for me, when I think about how it is that the builders and builder supply have been in somewhat of a depressed market over the last few years, now's the time that I would want to buy into this depressed market, right? Down here at the bottom. Now, again, if you go and look at the nail chart, you can see that it pretty much spikes and valleys about every 2 years or so. So I'm thinking that I am at the beginning of this 2-year valley so that it could drop more or not going into the future, and that I will be buying in the bottom of the dip, right? Of the bottom of the trough. If you look again at that nail chart, there's spikes that are much, much, much higher than where we are in the positions today, and they spike about every 2 years or so. So again, like after 2 years, that's when I'm going to dollar cost average out on the way up. Right? And it makes sense to me that even if you were to create a perfect economic condition right now for the builders, it would probably take a year to 6 months, or a year and 6 months to 2 years for it to really come into fruition. So, if the economy is becoming less restricted and people start figuring that out, and the Federal Reserve does actually lower rates at some point and stimulates the economy, we could find that in about 2 years, things are really hot and heavy within the builders market, and we will have bought at the bottom of a 3 times leveraged market, which is absolutely insane to try and do. But, what do I know? I'm the uneducated economist. I'm just going to go for it and see what happens, right? And that's me. Now, again, you guys take it with a grain of salt. I do not call this investment advice. I'm just trying to tell you something that I am up to, and I do not expect anybody else to try and do anything like this, because if you lose a bunch of money, don't blame me. All right? That's all I'm saying. That's why I've never tried to be an investment in channel. I've always been an economics channel, trying to show the underlying economic forces that are at play. It's been the goal of the entire channel the entire time. $5 from BD. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. You guys are awesome. Simon, thanks for all the time you give. Good night, man. I appreciate it. Good night. And I am going to call it quits, because I'm going to go inside and lay down and go to sleep and get up in the morning and do it all again. All right? Because, you want to get up first thing in the morning and do more live streams? You guys want to do that with me? I might do that. We'll get up in the morning. We'll do this whole thing over again. How's that sound? There's a great video, guys. Before I let you go, there's a great video. If you go to my community page for my YouTube channel's community page, it was maybe about 5 posts ago or so. It's not too long ago. Maybe even 2 or 3 posts ago. There's a video that somebody had done an edit of one of my videos. Like, they literally took my video and edited it and did such a great job with this edit. It is so good. It's pretty much talking about the rising neutral interest rate, very much like I described, but it was something I talked about like over a year ago, like almost 2 years ago. But it's such a good video, and I encourage everybody to go check it out. I tried to contact the person who created that video, and they never contacted me back. And so I don't know if they just kind of moved on to other things in their life, but it was so awesome. Like, I think they were going around trying to find YouTubers to edit their videos for them. And if I had found this video earlier, I think I probably would have employed them, because it was such a fun video to watch. Anyway, go check it out. It's on my community page of my YouTube channel here. And again, it was like maybe 3 or 4 posts ago. Okay. Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.